All right. So we're going to go ahead and introduce the folks that we have on today that'll be talking. And I want to thank all of the residents that are chiming in today and here to talk about the Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill. Folks are still coming in, but I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Julian Graber. I'm the Executive Director of Protect P. And we have some of our staff members here today. And so we also have Beth, where did you go? I don't, you want to introduce yourself as well?
Yeah, I'm Beth Weinberger. I'm the Director of Research and Policy at the Environmental Health Project.
Great. Thank you. It's a little tough with all the folks coming in to hear everybody, so bear with us. Mr. Miller, would you like to introduce yourself? You're on mute if you're trying to talk.
I do that all the time. I'm sorry. My name is Jim Miller. I'm the Regional Director for Pennsylvania DEP in the Southwest Regional Office. I've been there about 3 months now.
Great, and thank you so much for joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
All right, and I know we have some local folks as well. So we're just going to go ahead and get started, and we can, get familiar with each other as we go along in our presentation, and have a conversation about the Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill. So if you'll go ahead to the next screen, Mary. Thank you. So we put together an agenda tonight. So first we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to have an introduction and some background on the landfill. And then we're going to share some information about what the local government is doing to help residents. Commissioner John Lorenzo wanted to be here tonight. Unfortunately, he had a family emergency and can't be here, but I did talk to him earlier today, and so he gave me some information to share with you all. There's also, we're going to talk about considerations for public health approach from the Environmental Health Project. So that's information that Beth is going to be sharing with us. And then information about what Protect PT is doing to try to help residents. And then we're very pleased to have Mr. Miller from the DEP to talk about what the DEP is doing and have their mission stated here to protect Pennsylvania's air, land, and water from pollution and to provide for health and safety of its citizens through a cleaner environment. And then we're also going to talk to residents directly. So, and I know that a lot of you had some questions for the DEP and potentially for us as well. So we want to make sure we address those questions and really figure out how we can work together to help the community of Rostraver and the surrounding community around the landfill. So if you go on ahead to the next screen, Mary. So just really quick, who is Protect PT? We are a nonprofit citizens group. We're working to ensure the safety, security, and quality of life for people in Westmoreland and Allegheny County. And we do this through education and advocacy to protect economic, environmental, and legal rights of people in those counties. And we serve other people as well outside those counties, but that's our main focus. We started working as a group of neighbors in 2014, and right now we have, hundreds of members. We have a small staff, many of whom are here today, and lots of wonderful organizational partners that we work with. Some are also here today, so thank you very much to the Environmental Health Project as well as the Sierra Club for joining us tonight. So we have 3 goals. That's to educate residents and local lawmakers with factual information so they can protect themselves better. We also work to empower residents and involve them in the local government process and engage our lawmakers directly at local meetings and hearings to ensure the rights of the people are protected. So if you go ahead to the next screen, Mary. Great. And so this is just a timeline of some of the events that have happened at the landfill over the course of the last couple of years, just to kind of get everybody up to date. So really in May of 2019, the Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill began trucking leachate to several different sites. And that actually get them into violation of their waste permit with the trucking of the leachate. And that was due to a problem with the way that they were processing the leachate at the local Bell Vernon Water Authority. And then in June of that year, DEP informed Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill that they need to apply for a minor permit modification because of the trucking change. And then in August of 2019, PA DEP and Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill collaborated on the leachate evaporator project that is not permitted just yet, but that's one thing that we can talk about. And then in February of 2020, there was a consent order and agreement to address some violations. And then again, in September of 2020, they submitted a Title V air permit renewal, seeking an exemption for an air permit for their CNG facility and leachate evaporator. And then in October of 2020, there was another consent order agreement with WSLs for their failure to cover waste, maintain mud, dust, and truck traffic, and maintain lateral escape of leachate. And then in December of 2020 of that year as well, PA DEP actually approved their Title V air permit renewal, and there was a corrective action plan that was approved by PA DEP to address violations and outstanding consent order, the COA violations. If you go ahead to the next screen. Unfortunately, that corrective action plan didn't result in them actually alleviating the violations, and DEP continued to give the landfill violations to this day. So in January, the landfill received 7 violations. For example, failure to maintain access roads, failure to maintain control runoff. In February, landfill received 8 violations for erosion and sedimentation control failures. And then in March, the landfill received 5 violations for daily cover not properly placed and vehicles not properly directed. So as you can see, this is an ongoing problem. And for the folks that are on the call that live in this neighborhood, they know that this is a problem that they've been dealing with for a long time. So we are really excited to hear from those folks later so they can talk directly to PA DEP and tell folks, really what's going on from their perspective. And I see some folks are hopping off. Maybe they're having trouble connecting. Patrick, I don't know if you want to touch base with Debbie, because I think she was having trouble connecting her internet. So maybe she could join by phone if her internet's given her problems. Oh, I think she's back. All right, and go ahead to the next screen, please, Mary. Did we skip a screen?
Yeah, this was the next one.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you. So this is actually a picture of the proposed location for the leachate evaporator near the current CNG facility. You can see the flare stacks here. Patrick, do you want to talk a little bit about this picture? Because I know you took this picture when you had a tour of the facility. And you're on mute if you're trying to talk. Oh, he's on with Debbie. Okay. All right. No problem. We're trying to work out some technical difficulties that residents are having, which continues to be a problem with COVID. All right. And then, so go ahead to the next screen, Mary. All right. So in 2020, we did a survey of residents, and we sent out over 7,000 surveys. And this was an every door direct mail, so it went to everybody. And we received about 170 back, which is about, over 2% we received back. And these are the main points that we wanted to make sure that we communicated, not only with PA DEP, but also with local officials. And we did have a press conference in January to really talk about this a little bit more. But, daily habits are being disrupted. These are local residents that are having to, divert where they drive because of the mud on the roads and things like that. A lot of the residents also have lost faith in local government. They reported that this issue has been going on for so long that they're really kind of seeking some type of help at this point that they haven't received for over 10 years. There's also a cost of living increase in the area because they are having to filter their air in their home. And a lot of them are also drinking bottled water, which is increasing their cost of living just by living near the landfill and trying to deal with the pollution on a daily basis. And then residents are noticing changes in their health, which is actually one of the most startling issues, that residents are feeling like they need to go to their doctor and report the health symptoms. About 21% went to their doctor and reported health symptoms, and then about 25% on a scale of 1 to 5 said that they were very concerned about their health, and wanted to get some more information about public health. And so that's why we're really happy to have the Environmental Health Project on with us today to be able to talk a little bit more about public health. So go ahead to the next screen. All right, so this is where Mr. Lorenzo would normally come in and talk about what the local government is doing, but I'm gonna step in for him tonight because he had a family emergency. But there were a couple things that that Ross Draver Township has been doing in order to try to get some sort of type of relief for residents around the landfill. And if you'll go to the next screen, Mary, one of the things that we found when we looked at the Ross Draver ordinances is that they have this hotspot, this stormwater hotspot ordinance. And so this actually gives them a little bit extra ability to help manage the stormwater. I think a lot of with Ross Draver Township, they just didn't know quite where their jurisdiction started and DEP's started and where they ended and where DEP's ended. So really we tried to get him in contact with one of the liaisons with DEP, and he's had a lot of success with talking with that liaison to be able to get some type of standard or some type of beefing up of the NEPTES permits from a municipal level, and just ensuring that the municipality is doing everything that they can possibly do to help residents. So that's one thing that they're doing. They're also employing, as a host municipality, they're also able to have an inspector of their own. And one thing that I would like to point out that Mr. Lorenzo, when I talked to him earlier today, felt a little frustration because of COVID. They're trying to get these inspectors trained, and I guess the trainings are stalled because of COVID. So that's one thing that we would like to maybe talk with the DEP about, getting some training done for the inspectors. As I imagine, that's something that he said that DEP sets up to make sure that the municipal inspector is trained properly to be able to go onto and view the site. And that will allow the municipality and the DEP to be able to work better together in order to try to make the changes that need to be made at the landfill. So, a lot of times we find that local residents are the best people to make these types of observations, whether it's, road runoff, mud, the people that are living in these communities are the best equipped to make some observations and to report these incidents to the DEP. And we're going to tell you later how you can continue to do that, because I know many of you have done that for years, and I want to thank you for that, because I think we wouldn't be here today with the DEP if you had not made those complaints. And so I want to thank you for doing that, and for, for trying to make your community better, because your voice is really important. So I just want to let you know that. So go ahead to the next screen. All right. And as I mentioned earlier, the landfill has been increasing residents' costs of living. And you can see here, we're talking, a lot of folks have lost faith in the water that they're drinking. And I'm not sure why, but, that's one thing that they're reporting. And so that bottled water is having them have an increase of $2,270 per household. And then if they're installing air filters, which I know many residents are doing because their air is so poor, many of the residents that we talked to couldn't sit outside. Oh, all right. Thank you for muting yourself. There was a little bit of an echo there. Some residents reported not being able to sit outside on a nice day, not being able to be outside for periods of time because of impacts to air quality. And so, many have taken steps to improve that with an addition to an air filtration system. Go ahead to the next screen. All right, so now we're going to hear from Dr. Beth Weinberger. She is the Director of Research and Policy for the Environmental Health Project. So go ahead, Beth. You have to unmute.
Okay. So thank you, Jillian. And I was invited to give EHP's perspective on what a public health focused approach would look like in this situation. So if your first priority was to protect communities surrounding this landfill, what are some of the things that you would do? So it's kind of harkening back to sort of public health 101. Take a preventive action in the face of uncertainty. So this could mean halting or mitigating risks to the community by preventing exposures, even if you don't have all the information on the table. Uncertainty could be thinking that not all the research is showing links between exposures and health impacts. The studies aren't quite good enough, so keep going with the activity, and eventually, maybe the research is strong enough to then go back, break the chain of exposure, maybe apologize for any health impacts that have occurred in the meantime. Another sort of principle is shift the burden of proof to the industry side. Company and regulators have to be the ones to prove what it's doing is safe. Communities should not have to prove that there will be or that there has been harm. This can get tricky in kind of the language, saying, for instance, there's not evidence that X causes Y. It's not the same as saying there's evidence that X does not cause Y. An example of this is saying there's no known link between an environmental exposure and Ewing sarcoma. That's not saying there is no link. It's saying that maybe there's no link that's fully understood, that's been identified, and so there could be a link, we just don't know. So our public health approach would start with a really detailed, comprehensive, high caliber air monitoring plan, designed, written up, accessible, maybe input from some outside experts. And we would take these measures or suggest DEP could take these measures because this is not your ordinary municipal landfill because of the shale waste that's been deposited there. This monitoring plan would document in a really meaningful way what is in the ambient air in these communities. So you'd start now, you'd start with what's considered baseline in every direction. You'd need to comprehensively and carefully choose the list of things to monitor. You're not going to be able to pinpoint what exactly the origin is of every toxic that you may find. For us, that's okay, because when people breathe in the contaminants, it doesn't matter where they came from. It matters in a regulatory sense, but in a public health sense, it doesn't matter where the toxics are that you're breathing in. So it's just trying to get an assessment of what's going on at the air in people's homes, schools, other nearby buildings, with the goal always to minimize the risk posed to neighborhoods. This means collecting data through multiple weather cycles, maybe continuous data, but short increments like minute by minute data for something like particulate matter. And then average that data also in short time frames. Health events can be triggered in under an hour of a spike in emissions. And so if you average emissions over a month or you total them over a year, you miss these spikes of sort of enhanced risk as it goes along. The other thing is to acknowledge that this landfill will emit mixtures and combinations of pollutants. They may be, for the ones that are regulated, they're regulated one by one mostly, but they can act together to produce health risks, and they can be additive, they can be synergistic, and you really want to know as much as you can about that. In considering whether an evaporator is a better decision than any other options that might be on the table, we would look at the radium, in its most common isotopes, radium-226, 28. Radium-226 decays into radon, which is the second leading cause of lung cancer in the US. Radon's also been linked to certain lymphomas. Breathing in and ingesting radium is really dangerous once it's in the body. People call them bone seekers because they take up residence in the bones and they can cause bone cancer. And researchers have detected radioactive material in leachate, in sediment. It's not really up for debate whether it's there. We know it's in the Marcellus Shale, and we know it comes up with drill cuttings and muds and produced water. So that's not really up for debate. And so what is up for debate, or one of the things up for debate, is whether the best thing I'm echoing. Whether the best thing to, what's the best thing to do now? And is it worth the risk of getting radioactivity into the air as the water evaporates? Really the thing to do. At EHP, we don't think anyone can prove based on the best science that the evaporation plan in this instance is safe. So the onus is on regulators, maybe also with participation in the company, to show, if you could, that in study after study, radium under circumstances like these causes no harm and poses no risk with an evaporator. It's going to be also difficult to prove that the intensifying level of radiation in the landfill cannot make its way to homes or gardens or drinking water. So there really has to be a fuller analysis saying this is what the best science says before letting people be exposed to this new pathway. I think there's, I haven't looked into this, but I'm not certain there's not already baseline exposures to radium and radon, and this would be an additional exposure, making it all the more dangerous. And keeping in mind that the body doesn't excrete all the radioactivity that enters, so some stays in there and it accumulates. So at every turn, we just feel like this has to be done with utmost care because we think the stakes are high in these communities, and shortcuts can't be taken. Can't use a monitor for beta emitters to detect alpha emitters. You can't use a Suma canister on a bright, dry, breezy day when you're unlikely to capture what's there on a bad day, because that's what we care about. And finally, no one has asked their consent on this as a resident. And we think if risks are being posed, the state, so DEP or the Department of Health, should warn residents that they may be seriously affected. It's not unprecedented for public agencies to warn residents of environmental hazards. In this case, you would warn them if there's an additional cancer risk to them and their families. You would warn them about other health risks they may be facing from the landfill. You would warn women of childbearing age and parents of young children, especially that they are especially at risk. You know, children aren't small adults when it comes to, well, when it comes to anything. Children are not small adults when it comes to anything, but especially when it comes to the effects of toxic exposures, they metabolize differently. We think health conditions in this area have to be followed and there have to be appropriate actions. And we think people with power and authority over health have an obligation, and they have the tools to protect, before anything else, the health of their Pennsylvania residents.
Great, thank you so much, Beth. And so I wanted to leave in this slide from our press conference. These are the results of our survey that said that 26% of residents who took the survey noticed changes in health. 22% had noticed dizziness or loss of balance. 21% have gone to a doctor because of changes in health. And so 37% of residents consider the impacts created by the landfill damaging to their family's health. And many report changes to health since the landfill has been in operation near their homes, including some who have sought medical attention. And I will say, you know, from one thing that we learned from our survey is that many of the residents in this community have lived there for a very long time. These are primarily older residents, and they have lived in this community for a very long time. And so they've been dealing with these impacts for a long time as well. And this is just a quote from one of the residents who took our survey. Go ahead to the next screen, Mary. All right. So next, we're going to talk a little bit about what we're doing as an organization. You know, we did send our survey to really to get an idea of what residents were being impacted by with the landfill. You know, we did have an idea because we had some residents that had called and contacted us. And we just wanted to get a more wide perspective of what folks were dealing with, and really start to catalog some of those issues. So then we could better talk with our regulators and better talk with our local officials to find some type of resolution. So that's one thing that we're going to continue to do. And we're going to continue to advocate for the public health perspective that Beth was talking about, and to ensure that the residents that are living near the landfill, you know, get some type of relief from the impacts that they've been dealing with for the last decade. And with things like, you know, additional CNG facilities that are being proposed and additional evaporators that are being proposed, you know, this is concerning since, you know, many of the residents have already been experiencing impacts, and then we're going to add new facilities to this one polluter. And, you know, what is that going to do for the quality of life that's already being impacted by by the landfill with residents? So, you know, these are just some of the other statistics that we found. You know, the 60% of residents consider the impacts created by the landfill as bothersome. 27% are spending less time outside because of the air impacts. And 50% have changed driving habits to avoid the traffic, to avoid the trucks. Many of the residents, one thing that we heard kind of across the board was the enormous amount of mud and debris and stuff that was on their vehicles that they had a really hard time getting off. And you know, on this road debris can be especially harmful on those dry days where, the debris is kicking up in the air, is going to make the air quality worse. So you can see also another quote from a resident. And if you'll go ahead to the next screen. All right, so we have our environmental scientist, Kathleen Brasso, with us, and she's going to talk a little bit about what she's doing in the community to deploy air monitoring equipment.
Thanks, Jillian. Well, like Beth said, if we had all of the resources that we desired, we would be setting up a large multi-phase air monitoring program. But for now, we're setting up short-term air monitoring at several locations in the area to people who expressed interest in the surveys and went online and signed up through our online form. We've had 7 units out thus far, which is really exciting. I am still working with some people at EHP on how to present and analyze that data to best inform people about their air quality in this specific region. We are also installing stationary air monitors, and these are purple air monitors, which do particulates, just so everyone's aware. And we have 1 permanent air monitor set up. You can see it's called out right there with the nice large pink arrow. And this map is available to anyone who goes online to the Purple Air website. So you can check your local air quality anytime. You can just log on and look, and there is an actual air monitor where that dot is, and that is the particulate air quality right then. And we hope to have 3 more permanent air monitors installed in this area in the next couple of months.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so if you are interested in one of the 32-day studies, you can contact Kathleen. We're going to have our contact information on the last screen. Also, Mary, if you wouldn't mind, or Patrick, popping the link to the online form for people to sign up if they'd like to sign up for air monitoring. This is one way that residents can protect themselves from, and of course, we are looking for some host families to have, to be able to have these other permanent air monitors. And if you want to know what it looks like, this is exactly what it looks like on the map. You'll see the number in real time of what the air quality is like. And this is the PMs. This doesn't, give us any data for the VOCs, but at least we're looking at the PMs in the area. And so we'd like to get a couple sites around the landfill in each direction. And so we as an organization have invested in the equipment that we can invest in to do that preliminary air modeling, air monitoring. And so we're hoping to find more families that would like to have an air monitor in their home. And so if you would like to, go ahead and give Kathleen a call. And again, we want to thank our partners at the Environmental Health Project for analyzing some of that data with us. So what we do is with a 32-day study, Kathleen will grab the monitor from the home, and we'll actually have 2 monitors, one indoor, one out, and she'll send that data to the Environmental Health Project, and they will then analyze that data and send us a report to then forward on to the residents. So they have a report of their own. And hopefully within the next couple months, we also will have a mobile app. So this is an exciting new development we're hoping to launch within the next couple months, where, by the beginning of summer, we'll have a mobile app where people can go online and, they can make a complaint, log any kind of complaint that they're having on our mobile app. and we actually will, at the end of the complaint, we'll give you some information for your local DEP office if it's a DEP complaint. If it's not, maybe it's a local official complaint, we'll go ahead and let you know to contact your local official instead. And we're hoping that this interaction will allow folks to understand what the regulatory agency is that they should contact, who has jurisdiction to take care of that for them. And we're hoping that by gathering this data, we can work together with those agencies to better help the folks in this region, as well as around Pennsylvania, because anyone in Pennsylvania can use the app. All right, so go ahead to the next screen then, Mary. Okay, we also have some tools for residents online. So we have our observation complaint tool. It's on our oil and gas waste website. And so if you go to protectpt.org/waste, and if you have a complaint, you can fill out our form. At the end of the form, we have a direct link to the Ross Driver commissioners and also the DEP. So if it's something that is a DEP complaint, or you want to complain to the Ross Driver commissioners, let's say there's mud on the road, or let's say your air quality you notice is poor, you can go ahead and make those complaints. And then when we have our app, you'll actually be able to print out your results from your report and bring them to your doctor if you feel like your health is being impacted as well. And then we also have our home resource guide workshops. Those are throughout the year, and they're to teach residents about complaint and compliance for state and local laws. And this is an interactive workshop where we have you gather information from your local district to be able to put into a notebook that you'll have in your home for when you need it. We give you information on air and water quality and air and water monitoring and how to do that, emergency response and preparation, as well as our noise pollution monitoring program. So you can go ahead to the HRG workshop page and sign up for that as well. And we give you a guide to be able to have in your home and keep. And so this is what it looks like. It's a 3-ring binder, so you can add resources to it as you need to. And there's a big section on waste in here as well. So go ahead to the next screen. All right, so we invited DEP here tonight, and we want to thank them for coming to really be able to talk with residents directly and address some concerns that we've already talked about, and maybe some concerns that they're hearing about, and try to figure out a way that we as a team can help the residents of the area. So Mr. Miller, did you want to talk at all?
Sure. Yeah, I just give you an update on where we're at in the processes with some of the things that are going on at the landfill. As you know, they submitted a plan approval for the evaporator. We reviewed it, had issues with it, so we sent out a technical deficiency letter to the landfill, and these documents are posted on our website. They responded to that technical deficiency letter, and that's what we're currently reviewing in our air quality program. From here, it can go one of two ways. If we deem that they've satisfied our questions and answered our questions, then we would draft a draft plan approval, and that would be published in the Pennsylvania Bulletin, but we'd also put it on our website, and we could give you a copy too to distribute to your members. We would have a public meeting to discuss that plan approval and get comments from the public on that plan approval. The other option is, if they haven't met or given us the information that we've requested, we could do another technical deficiency letter to the company and say, you still haven't addressed X, Y, and Z, and we need those answers. So, but right now we're still reviewing the data that they've submitted to us. Another thing they're doing on the air quality side is they submitted a request for determination, an RFD, to operate a CNG fueling station. When it came into us, there again, this document is also posted on our website, and I think I've provided those to you as well, Julia. but they indicated on the RFD they were going to be using gas from the landfill, which is not what they had told us they were going to do. They told us they were going to use commercial grade natural gas from a vendor. And so that's what we rejected their request for determination, because if they're going to use landfill gas, it is regulated more stringently than commercial natural gas. And so we didn't accept that. They said it was just a mistake, and they're going back to address that. So we're waiting for the resubmission of an RFD that they said they're going to submit to us. The other thing we had going on, and I think you alluded to it, or someone talked about the mud that was being dragged out onto the roadways. We did test that. We didn't find it was above background for radiation. So we weren't worried about that aspect of it. It is a safety hazard, and it is a health hazard. If it does get dry and it's making dust, that's a problem as well. So we cited the landfill for that, and we asked them to provide a correction action plan on what they were going to do to correct that. And they submitted a corrective action plan to us. And just yesterday, we got a letter from the landfill indicating they had done all the short-term actions that we had requested them to do. So we will have an inspector going out there shortly to verify that. They did send pictures, but what they did was put in new stormwater channels, cleaned out the old ones, aligned them with riprap, and did that in several areas. They also installed sedimentation ponds in new areas. There's 2 new sedimentation ponds they put in. They put in a road on their landfill area, the borrow area, which is where they stockpile soil they're going to use at the landfill. They took a huge stone and put that on in the ground. So they didn't actually pave it, but they made an impervious surface. And so when the trucks come off the working face, instead of heading down toward the public road, they make a right and go up into the landfill and drive along this stone road to get off the mud and debris before they go through the truck wash. So this is one more thing they can do to eliminate the mud being tracked out onto the highway. They also set up a flagging operation on the highway in conjunction with PennDOT, and they use their road sweeper to clean off the road and to also remove the dirt berms that had collected there. It was because of the mud, it was all being pushed to the sides of the road, and that was channeling stormwater down the road. And when we'd have freezing temperatures, that would create a sheet of ice on the highway, which is a major safety concern. So they were out there and removed all those dirt and debris along the sides of the road. So we're going to see and monitor that and see if that corrects the mud dragging out onto the highway. And we're hopeful that it will, but if it doesn't, we'll cite them again for that. So that's where we're currently with it.
Great. And we actually do have one question in the chat for you, Mr. Miller. They ask, when does the current permit expire or expect to be renewed? It needs to be pulled until they comply and not allowed to operate until they are back in compliance. Do you have any response to that question?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head when the permit expires. I could check on that and get you that date, but I don't know it off the top of my head. Pulling a landfill's permit, I mean, you wouldn't do that just for a mud issue. I know we don't like landfills, they have downsides to them, but right now that's how we as a society handle our garbage. And so the garbage has to go somewhere. So when you shut down a landfill, you're going to have tons and tons, hundreds of tons of garbage that has to go somewhere. It's not just going to disappear. We don't stop generating garbage. Every household generates it, and it has to be handled. So For us to pull a landfill permit, there'd have to be something dire going on. It wouldn't be over something like this, mud being tracked onto the highway.
Okay, and so I believe, and I'd have to look online, there is, I believe there's an indication on the PA DEP website of when the permit needs to be renewed, but I want to say when I last looked at it, it was in September that they need to renew it
Okay.
by September. So I would think that soon here you may hopefully be getting the renewal document. And would you mind sharing that with us when you do get that in?
Yeah, we could do that. I know in the North Central region where I worked, it would be about 7 volumes of binders that would come in. We've been asking everybody to submit things electronically. We could probably make that available on a disk or a flash drive. I don't think something that big, I don't think we would want to post online. And I know we couldn't send it through an email. So, but I would have no problem sharing that with you. Also, by regulation, that has to be sent to the host municipality for them to make available to residents in an area where people can get to it, and the county. And so both the host municipality and the county have to make that available to the residents for review. And we would do the same as well. You could come into our office and review those in hard copy as well. The regulations state that they have to have their application into us. I believe it's within 6 months of when their permit is going to expire. And so as long as they do that, they're granted an administrative extension until we finish our review of the renewal.
Okay. So in a couple months here, or actually really soon here, we should be getting the renewal if it's due in September, which I believe it is. So we will be looking out for that. And I'll let Mr. Lorenzo know from Ross Traver Township to look out for that. And I had a comment, you had mentioned, we need landfills, or our garbage would pile up. What about the option of restricting what the landfill can accept as waste? There was one incident where the landfill accepted, I forget how many yards of deer carcasses, and it was really a really bad smell for the people that lived around the landfill because they didn't, again, properly cover it. And how could we, I think one of the problems that we've identified is certainly with the leachate issue is that the leachate contains constituents similar to oil and gas waste because they've been accepting oil and gas waste for the last 10 years. So can the DEP restrict the type of waste that they're accepting?
Yes, in fact, when we permit the landfill, they have to submit a Form R to us. And what that Form R does is it shows chemical constituencies of the waste they're going to take. And they have to show us that it's compatible with the liner system they're going to use. And that's how we determine what waste can go in there. We don't want the waste they're taking to degrade the liner and cause a hole in the liner, because then the leachate is not getting collected and it's going to go down into the groundwater. So that's what we don't want them. So that's pretty much how we determine what waste they can take. And they do, if they want to add a new waste stream, there's a process for that. It's called a Form U process. And they submit how much they want to take per month, per year, who the generator is, and they have to submit chemical analysis of that waste to us. And then our chemist reviews that and determines if they can accept that or not and how much they can accept.
Okay. That's good information. Thank you for sharing that.
Mhm.
And I may ask you to, I may follow up and see if I can find those forms online. If I can't, I'll let you know. Because I would like to see what that chemical analysis of the waste that they've been taking is and see if the oil and gas waste is included in there. We do have a couple more questions in our chat. How often will inspectors be sent out to check the landfill? How does the DEP ensure that the landfill will upkeep their action plan to mitigate violations?
By regulation, we have to inspect it 12 times a year, but I can tell you when we have compliance issues, we're out there a lot more often than that. I know just, in February, our inspector was out there 4 times. looking at things. And that was just our waste inspector. We also had radiation protection inspectors and clean water inspectors out there as well. So, we do keep an eye on them. There's a minimum we have to do, but I know, like I said, when there's compliance issues, the visits go up.
Okay. And another question, are there any requirements for the evaporator to limit radon or radioactivity present in the landfill leachate? Is there a plan to monitor for radioactivity in the fence line? And there was an academic study showing increased radioactivity on air particulate downwind of fracking operations. So that last one is a comment, but these are also in the chat if you need to review them as well.
We did. That's why we sent the technical deficiency letter. And I believe it was because of public comment on the first plan approval that was drafted. Somebody brought up the issue of radiation because of the radium. And so that is what our technical deficiency letter was requesting. They did submit that to us. Our air quality program is working in conjunction with our radiation protection program to look at that. And I know that's what they're, reviewing now and discussing in-house right now, if it's safe or if it's not safe, what controls would be in place if we would approve that. Those are some of the things being discussed as we review that submission that they sent to us in response to the technical deficiency letter.
Okay. We've got another question or potential comment. There was a shipment of radioactive sludge planned for shipment to this area in PA to a landfill in Michigan. At first, Michigan accepted the shipment, but then I understand it never arrived. Did it get disposed of at a PA landfill instead? I'm not sure if we can answer that question. It says it was 2014.
Yeah, I'd be speculating. I don't know anything about that situation.
Okay. Okay. And then, and we can keep getting questions from the chat, but if you aren't able to access the chat and would like to ask a question directly, you can either go to your reactions tab and raise your hand if you'd like, and I'll call on you, or you could unmute yourself if there's an opportunity for you to have a question answered. Does the permit address how workers should be handling this waste? I'm worried that many workers, in addition to residents, are unknowingly going to be exposed to radioactivity.
I don't believe it does. We usually let that up to OSHA. I know firsthand, though, when I was in the North Central region, there's a large amount of drilling going on there, unconventional drilling. And we had a wastewater treatment plant that just treated the oil and gas wastewater. And they produced a sludge from that treatment of that water. When they sent it to one of the local landfills, it set off the radiation detection meter. And so what we did in regard to that was had radiation protection come up and assay the container, determine how hot was the radium that was in there. And based on our inspector's survey, he found that it was not harmful to the workers that were there. They would have had to spend a lot of time, hours and hours and hours just standing around that box to have a problem with it. But we did consider it in that case. But I know we don't put those things into our permits, though. I believe we let OSHA regulate that.
Another resident says, follow up to void permit, not just for road mud, but for emissions and odors and numerous violations on file. And if anyone wants to ask a question, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself. Go ahead, Debbie.
Thank you, Jillian. I was listening in, and I'm sorry that we didn't join the meeting the correct way this evening. Mr. Miller, you had talked about public hearings. Last year, Mr. Sapesky had another local resident, and 5 of us had gone out and gotten 300 signatures against this evaporation system. We desperately do not want it over our heads, especially given the fact that the leachate was cut off to the Bell Vernon Sewage Authority. And we just don't want this chemical coming up over us. And we've never heard back from the DEP. You know, I've seen interviews, actually even ones where Paul Van Osdol was out here, Jillian was interviewed, I was interviewed. You had representatives saying that you've been back in touch with us. None of us have been, had anybody come back and reach out to us. The local DEP officer, Matt Shawley, I'm at this 10 years now, and when you tell me that you're going to do something, quite truthfully, sir, I'm very skeptical. I wonder what's happened with the 300 signatures, why we weren't approached. You know, why are we out here still digging a deep hole for ourselves and nobody is helping us?
Yeah, I'll apologize on behalf of the department for nobody getting back to you. I started here in January of this year, so I can't speak to why the region didn't get back to you. I'm here tonight because I want to hear what you have to say. I want you to hear what I have to say. I believe in communication. So, you know, all I can do is you know, you watch what we do going forward. I can't, you know, correct what happened in the past.
Well, quite truthfully, like yesterday, I went out and I'm sitting here and I'm looking at all the violations only back to December. And, you know, you're telling me what it is they are telling you that they've corrected. And I'm just going to use just one as an example, the Clean Streams Law. I go back, it's been broken so many times. Unfortunately, tonight, because I'm not on Zoom, we went to Greensburg, of course, when they were asking for a loan or a grant, rather. And I had big pictures from 2020, 2019. They've been breaking the clean streams laws for years. The stuff is still going down and into our waterways. By the time it has to be cut off to the sewage authority, I think this is more than just mud that's floating through there that I'm breathing less than a half a mile away over to my farm. And I am extremely concerned, as are all the other people, especially when Dr. John Stoltz did such a chemical analysis of what was in that leachate. And then they want to say to me, oh, we want to evaporate it. And I spoke personally with Ben Williams, and I know he's another DEP officer here. 5 years ago, he crawled down over a hill with me, and we got water samples, and oddly enough, they all disappeared. The chain of command wasn't available, and I am just up past what the DEP doesn't do for us out here. I don't think that you come out and know enough about what goes on locally. And last year, anytime I would call in, oh, it was COVID. I said, you don't need to go in and make an inspection. I said, just go to the road where I'm at and you'll see it. I was out yesterday. It looks like they took in recycling bags. I don't even understand why I'm not seeing massive big black garbage bags. Instead, I'm seeing hundreds of thousands of little white bags like they took in a recycling project from somebody, because that's what's not being covered. There's never enough cover. Last summer, they put big tarps all over it. It was never covered. And I guess what I'm so sick of is you keep going out and you say, oh, you bad boys. But nobody ever hits them in the damn pocketbook. Nobody gives them a fine that's worth anything. The little bit they were fined last year that they could break into 3 parts of $19,000 a hit, someone cut me a break. It's time to put some financial hurt on these people so they comply. And I want to know why the DEP doesn't.
Go ahead.
We did cite them recently. I can't comment on pending enforcement actions. When they're final, they will be posted on our website.
I see your postings all the time. I send them to my commissioners. I send them to everybody.
Yeah. And one thing I'd like to make correct the perception here. Nobody made, the department didn't make the landfill stop sending their leachate to the treatment plant. The treatment plant sued the landfill to break up a contract they had with the landfill. So that's what happened. We didn't tell the landfill you couldn't send the waste there.
No, sir.
Well, Jim.
Mr. Kroll speaking.
Hello?
Go, you know what? Go ahead, Jack, and then we'll have Gerald speak. Okay. So I know
Okay.
you've had your hand up. I'm sorry.
You mean Gerald Jackson? No, okay. Good evening, Mr. Smith. This is Jack Kroll. And I live a quarter of a mile from the landfill, and it's been a decade of problems. We're going a decade and 3 months, okay? We know that this landfill takes in municipal waste from sewage treatment plants, okay? And of course, you have access to the tonnages. And you see how many times they've been cited for improper cover. What's in the cells is dragged out into the roads, and plus they have been and were cited for shipping in after operational hours. In this sewage sludge, well, your biosludge that come from your sewage treatment plant in question, because we're not covering properly, the Zuckerberg Group has formed BioHub, and actually they can track the COVID through surveillance in the sewage lines, your laterals from your house to your trunk lines to your main lines, and actually isolate the COVID through sewage. And I smell municipal waste at my residence because it has its own unique smell. And what safeguards are being taken other than citing them for lack of cover?
I don't know how to address that because I'm not, aware of any studies with COVID in sewage sludge and how that reacts in landfill. This is all, it's been about a year since we've had the pandemic now. So I know as a department, we haven't looked at that. So I know, you can track it in sewage. The city of Erie measures it in their sewage, and they can tell when there's an uptick in cases because of that. I didn't know you could track it back to single home residents and tell if there's COVID coming from that house or not, but that's the first I'm hearing that. But, we haven't addressed that as a department. If you could, if the COVID could become airborne from sewage sludge from a landfill.
Okay, I see your stance on that. Also on operations of this landfill, okay? We know that this landfill was owned by CCS Midstream. And then in 2015, in that time period, it was purchased by Trevita. And in 2015, I have the deed in front of me from Westmoreland County Prothonotary, where Trevita transferred this was an intercorporate move of assets, and they put their holdings into Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill, basically having its business place of principle in Calgary, Canada. And in this deed that I have here, there's an acknowledgement about this landfill, sir. Brief, but I'll read it because it's very important. The acknowledgement pursuant to 35 PS of the Pennsylvania statutes, a portion of the property being conveyed as of the date of the transfer, and this is February of 2015, has been used as a municipal solid waste landfill. This use began prior to regulation of the disposal of solid waste, requiring that all disposal areas of the property behind. Benzene is one of the substances that has been directed in the groundwater monitoring wells located on the property during the grantor's ownership. Other hazardous materials may be detected in the future. This acknowledgement shall be included in all subsequent deeds of recording, conveying all or any portion of the property. In 2017, we had asked the owners for proof that this landfill was no longer Trevita and became property of Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill, basically 2195 Morgantown Road. At that point, the owners of the landfill gave our solicitor at the time this deed transfer from February of 2015, which no, this was a Trevita intercorporate transfer. Such time Trevita was also going into bankruptcy. So we had asked, and the township had requested, and that would have been Solicitor Gaudio, the correct deed of transfer to this landfill. What he had provided, and I have in front of me, as given to me by the township, was a UCC filing statement. And on this UCC filing statement, the first page is the financial statement is to be filed for the record or recorded in real estate records, and it is stamped March the 1st, 2017. This is not a deed transfer, but interesting because you are the environmental law here. In this, what was submitted, and I have the first page here of it, and of course the principle of business is in 2195 Morgantown Road. It is received by Prothonotary. Then we get into the third page, the A1 real property, also stamped by Westmoreland Prothonotary, March the 1st, 2017. What the owners have done, they took the acknowledgement, and this page is, the acknowledgement is whited out on the acknowledgement stating the benzene issues. Being that this acknowledgement was removed by the owners and operators, one would have to assume that this issue of the benzene and all this was either permitted by EPA and DEP to be cleaned up, because you did take it out of the legal documents that you provided. So I'm requesting all cleanup records, manifest of disposal, and such of this benzene issue that they took out and put this into a legal document stating this was the new deed. But yet to date, sir, I cannot find a transfer from Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill, LLC, from Calgary to Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill in Uniontown. And what was amazing, as we had a landfill sold in McCullentown, and a public notice was posted in the Herald Standard at least 4 times in January, going into February of this year, and by law, and it stated a public notice on or about January 29, 2021, Chestnut Valley Landfill, previously Advanced Disposal, Chestnut Valley Landfill, will submit a permit reissuance application to the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection Waste Management for the Chestnut Valley Landfill. This can all be viewed, I'm going to shorten this, and they want the reissuance of the municipal solid waste permit, and that is to be transferred into Everglade Holdings, which is a waste management company. This document was posted basically at the German Township Municipal Building, the courthouse in Fayette County, etc. And of course, you could opposition, and all that time period was in there for anybody to oppose this. This was at least posted through January into February. There is no such posting for this landfill, Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill, to be found. It was researched. The township, there was no posted operational transfer permit ever publicly put into the paper. So really, why not? Where's the cleanup on the benzene issue? Because the management took it out of here. This was all given to Prothonotary as a legal document, and also their financial party, Northwest Bank. So we're either they intentionally left it out, or what I'm requesting, I want the cleanup records. These articles, what I have here was also given, I will say, to an agency, plural maybe agencies who have all this in. I would like your comment on this, because what we're showing is oversight. And basically what I think or see, why did not the DEP's chief legal counsel spot these and reference this to the Attorney General? We have an issue here that the benzene in this part of the landfill, it's not in here. It's not in the UCC filing. So exactly what is going on with this operation?
Yeah, this is the first I'm hearing of this issue. So I'll look into it. I know depending on the regulations and how the purchase goes through, and it's been a while, it's been over 10 years since I've been in the program, so I can't remember the specifics. But I know in one instance, we do have to issue a new permit. And it depends on, like, if you buy the asset in its entirety, or if it's a new company coming in, things like that have to do with whether we have to issue an entirely new permit, or if it's just a letter approval. So, you know, I can look into that as well, but that may be the difference on why it happened. I can't say that is the difference, but that's one possibility because of how the regs state things transfer.
Title V, they could have did an amendment on it, but they were still going by Trevita and other entities for quite some time after these dates. And if you go back to, I mean, even the debacle between the sewage authority and what was going on there, even in the filings, it was Trevita, Westmoreland Sanitary Landfill, etc., because there was no discretion. And regardless, that permit, operational transfer, was never posted, and we once again had no comment as to oppose it because of the living hell we went through from the previous owners. And once again, benzene is highly carcinogenic. They intentionally deleted it from these documents, so it's either cleaned up or there's kind of a misrepresentation here.
Okay. Thank you so much, Jack. Mr. Jackson, I know you want to speak. I have a quick question. Is George's iPhone, is that Debbie and Jack, or is that someone else?
We're on a land phone, Jillian.
Okay, because George's iPhone has had his hand raised for some time, and I apologize. When you had unmuted yourself before, I heard kind of an echo. So we're going to get to Mr. Jackson, and then we're going to begin with George's iPhone, if that's all right.
That's fine. You unmute us or mute us again.
Yeah, thank you so much for hanging in there, guys. We want to make sure we get everyone's questions answered. Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
Mr. Miller, this is Gerald Jackson, Mayor of Bell Vernon, also on the Water Authority. First of all, I'd like to thank you for coming tonight. You're the first person from DEP in the last 3 years that I got to address. We've asked so many questions that is not been answered to our community. And I look forward to you getting back to me in the private. We can go over some of the issues. But one thing I want to address tonight that you said that that we sued the landfill. We did not sue the landfill, sir. what happened was the DEP guy that came out was not doing his job, okay? And he suggested to our superintendent to go ahead, take the fines, let it go, and we said no. So the local DA, Rich Bowers from Fayette County, and Mr. Vitone from Washington County issued and got an injunction. We did not sue. To make sure that you know, we did not sue. It was because of the improper use of what the DEP was not enforcing. There's one big question I have, and it's a big question is, and nobody addresses it at these meetings, and I've been asking for a long time. The leachate water that that's coming from the dump. Now, I know that we were taking in 100,000 gallons a day, in some days 300,000 gallons a day. So my question to you is, I know you can't pull it up right in front of you, is where is the leachate going? I've heard rumors, and they're taking out, and the figures that the DEP released does not match the amount of volume. So there is mines located up there, and I just was afraid of that they were drilled into I saw some drilling rigs up there, and I was afraid that they were drilling into the mine and just putting the rest of that water into the mines. My main concern is for the people that could be downstream in the Donora, Monongahela, Webster, Elizabeth area. That's going to affect the water. It was affecting the water in Charleroi. Our superintendent is willing to give you any information that we have. And I'd like to thank Mr. Krupa for being on this call tonight. Also, I'd like to thank Rachel Wilson, the Chief of Staff, for Bud Cook for being on this so that the representatives know. And I know that she'll respond to this and send message to the local representatives, Representative Warner and Representative Devanzo, and she will get that out to them on this meeting. So this meeting is being attended by the representatives and by our superintendent. Now, Mr. Miller, I look forward to having a conversation with you, maybe a meeting with our superintendent, myself, and maybe the municipal board. But again, thank you for coming out. But I'd really like to know where the water is really going. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, and thanks for correcting me on that. I do know that we do know where it's going. We have receipts from that. I think it's West Virginia and maybe Ohio as well. It's going to wastewater treatment plants, but I can get that information for you.
I also think there's some going to Altoona.
Okay.
If I remember correctly. Okay, so George's iPhone, if you would want.
Excuse me, Jack Kroll. It's going to Altoona, Duncansville, the westerly sewage treatment facility up there by Duncansville.
Okay.
Where it's going.
Thank you, Jack. Well, go ahead, George.
I want to speak from more of a medical health point of view. I think about that much more because I'm kind of in the medical field. There is no amount of toxin that you want to pour on your cereal and eat for breakfast. That's number one. So now we have a situation where they're placing more and more of an unknown product that's being drilled out of the ground. The combination of chemicals is unknown, and as they go through the ground, they create their own new chemistry coming in to drill, coming out. So between radiation and unknown chemical reactions going on, now being placed into a landfill, the volatile substances, the leachate leak from old liner, which wasn't meant to accept this material, the being downwind of this situation. for us to then, on top of the landfill, for us to go ahead and say, let's evaporate this material so that we can put more material here without covering. Let's evaporate it into the air. And I'm sure we're all going to really want to just stand there and sniff it up as if it were planting a bed of roses. I don't think that the community should be exposed to the new science of the evaporation and exposing us to volatiles being sent to the air in order for the landfill to be able to accept more unknown materials, which seem to be toxic from a lot of literature that I've read. I just wanted to throw that in there for everyone.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Okay, are there any other questions? I know that we have a lot of folks on here that may want to speak. If you'd like to speak, go ahead and unmute yourself now. And try to get folks one at a time.
No, it's on the cord.
Hi, Mr. Miller, thank you for being here. I just had a question. I know you said you just took this role in January. So I guess in your new role as the regional director, I was wondering if you have any plans, and you may need to get back to Jillian on this, but if you have any plans to speak to either your higher ups or whoever else you may need to see about legislative changes to give the DEP more authority. I know sometimes whenever you're working on enforcement actions, the DEP often cites statutory limitations within their authoritative power. So I was just wondering if you have any ideas on potential changes for that.
I don't at this time. Normally, our policy office in Harrisburg and our executive staff work on new regulations, and the bureaus in Harrisburg do that. Now, we do, they do get feedback from the regions. And when we see issues, we can bring that up with them. I know every year before the new legislative session, they ask, are there any issues we'd like brought up with the legislators? So we do have input into that. So that happens on a yearly basis.
Thank you for that question, Nija. And thank you, Mr. Miller, for the answer. All right, do any other folks have any other questions that they'd like to talk about right now?
Julian, Jack Crow, I have one question for Mr. Miller.
Okay.
When they put up their landfill methane stripping plant, because it's basically a mini Mark West plant, and of course you get the condensate, the VOCs, HAPs, the whole 9 yards. Solids go back into the landfill, of course. In their method, they said they came up with the ingenious new technology, of which I have their brochure and pamphlet, of thermo-oxidation. Thermo-oxidation is just a fancy word for flaring. And of course, you're going to have a landfill that has hot leachate, 370 picocuries per liter on the last test, so you are going to have radium families in the stream. Why was there no permit or monitoring one for any radiological analytics coming from their standard flare or their thermo-oxidation? And why was there not no closed capture for that as far as scrubbers or some type of converters to prevent all of these harmful elements from coming from either the flare or our new thermo-oxidation?
I'm sorry, I'm writing that down so I can bring that up with my staff. Yeah, I don't know at this time. I don't know what was looked at when they permitted the flare. I'll have to go back and look at that. Like I said, I don't think it was in their purview to, or not purview, but their intent to look for radiation when they first were looking at the evaporator. And so thankfully comments from citizens, pointed that out. And so we did that, but I'll have to check on what they looked at and what the criteria was for when they issued the permit for the flare.
I appreciate this because you basically have the same problem in New York at the Hakey and Chemung landfills, who took in large amounts of drill cuttings and tests were taking there, and your radon counts were very, very high. And of course, you have the same issue here based on the analytics of the leachate. And you're dealing with half-lives, of 1,600 years of 226 and 5.75 with 228. So there's not enough zeros on the calculator for when it dies. And this is what we have sitting in our backyard.
Yeah, I made a note of that. I'll make sure I get with my air quality staff and talk to them about that.
Mr. Miller, will you get back to any of us?
What I can do is get back to Jillian. I'm going to use her as my point of contact, and she can disperse it to the group here.
All right.
Mr. Miller, Mayor Jackson again. Our next meeting for the authority is April the 21st. If you're open to an hour before a meeting, we would appreciate it. Because we've never seen the DEP before, and we've been asking for 3 years now. And we understand you're the cleanup man, literally, to come in and clean this up. And I understand that. So if you could meet us on April the 21st, that's the third Wednesday, around 6 o'clock.
Yep.
Okay, so I get you, I pinpointed you now in front of everybody, so I know you're coming. Okay,
All right.
I do appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else have any other questions before we wrap up tonight?
I think Allison Acevedo, who's the director of our environmental justice program, is on the line. I think she wanted to say something.
That's-
Thank you, Jim. I just want to introduce myself. My name is Allison Acevedo, and I'm the director of the Office of Environmental Justice. And our office really supports communities. We do not have regulatory or legislative or legal authority to change the course of permits, but can help at this point with any support you need with getting information or contacting the DEP. The Protect PT is fairly well organized, but if there's any additional help, I know that I've heard a few people say that they had previously been unable to connect with DEP. Just wanted to let you know that feel free to contact our office if that's ever the case. And one of the other notes I was taking was whether or not there is anything that the health department might do, especially the Bureau of Epidemiology in this particular situation. So I send an email out to that department and we'll follow up to see if there are any resources there as well. And I'm going to put my email in the chat.
Great. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Director Acevedo. And we really appreciate you and Mr. Miller coming and speaking directly to residents. I also want to thank the Sierra Club because they connected us with you. And, we had been trying to contact someone from the DEP to come out, and that connection was vital to having this meeting come together tonight. So I really appreciate that. I know we have some folks from the Sierra Club on the call tonight. And I also, I heard a lot of information and requests from residents. We're going to follow up with a letter to the DEP, and we'll also post that on our website so residents can see it. But there are some things that I think, we as an organization on behalf of residents in the area would like to ask for, and just kind of from what our conversation has, manifested tonight, I'm hearing, potential fence line monitoring, air monitoring at the fence line to check to see if those levels of, PM and also VOCs are, are actually at the level that is in their air permit, their Title V air permit, to make sure that they're following that. Just from the comments that folks have made on this call, as well as in our survey, it seems like folks are suffering from air pollution and air quality issues. So we'd want to make sure we address that as well. And, also potentially asking the DEP to limit the type of materials that the landfill accepts. And that's certainly not going to clean up the mess that's there. Maybe there's other actions that need to be taken to clean up some of and maybe do some testing of the landfill materials to see if the landfill materials do contain oil and gas constituents that could be harmful to the public. Based on preliminary results and based on results from Dr. John Stolz, it seems like that leachate certainly is in that oil and gas constituent realm, where it's coming up with what George was talking about with, chemicals from not only from fracking, but also the technically enhanced oil and gas, the radiation, the T norms. So potentially there's an opportunity there to do some additional testing. And so those are some comments. And I know the DEP has been working to, bring violations to the landfill. But I think one sentiment that was heard here that I would like to echo is, kind of the next action of, giving them a piece of paper that is a notice of violation is not really preventing them from getting further violations. It's not preventing them from doing harm to the community. And so what we would like to ask for is that enforcement action be taken swiftly, as well as some type of hefty fine, if appropriate, would be given to the landfill, and these changes be made, permanent changes be made. I know that some residents have also voiced concerns about the expansion of the landfill. That's something that residents have talked to me about. So again, expanding any kind of facility is, that already has existing problems, doesn't seem like a great idea. So we would ask that, we're just going to gather some of these asks from the community, and we'll go ahead and send the DEP a letter letting them know that this is what the community is requesting. If folks on this call didn't have a chance to talk and would like to call us, we have our information up here, as well as Dr. Beth Weinberger's information at the Environmental Health Project. Please contact us and ask us any questions that you have. And also, there was the DEP context as well in the chat. This is being recorded, and we can go ahead and post it if that's easy for folks to look back on. I can also save the chat and post that as well. Are there any other questions or anything else that you guys would like to see as a community, would like to see us do, or other things that maybe we didn't talk about that the DEP could possibly look into for the future? Okay, well, I hope that everyone, had an opportunity to find out what we're all trying to work towards. And again, I want to thank Mr. Miller and Allison Acevedo from the DEP for being here tonight, and for listening to the comments and concerns of residents. We will be keeping in touch with you all, and please check our website and also the DEP's website for updates. And we're going to keep on this issue, and we would like to see some resolution and some quality of life changes, and some positive changes to quality of life for residents around the landfill in Ross Draver. And so thank you again, also Mr. Jackson and the other representatives that are here tonight for joining us, and have a great night. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.